The classified briefing room in CIA headquarters sat in darkness, except for the pale glow of a single projector. Grainy photographs flickered across the screen. Surveillance images from 1985 East Berlin, faces obscured by shadows in poor resolution. A man's voice, flat and bureaucratic, narrated over the static-filled recording. Operation Nightfall, Soviet intelligence penetration of United States military installations. Timeline, 1975 to 1990. Confirmed embedded agents, 34. The images changed. Documents marked with Cyrillic text. Photographs of American military bases. Personnel files with redacted names. Status as of November 1991. 33 operatives identified and neutralized. One remains at large. Codename unknown. Current location unknown. Threat level critical. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, the weight of those words hung heavy. One ghost, still hunting, still dangerous, still free. The scene shifted. Text appeared on screen. Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California. November 18, 1991. 8 months after Desert Storm. The Pacific wind cut across the training grounds with the kind of cold that seeped into bones and stayed there. Lieutenant Alexis Brennan stood at the edge of the obstacle course, her regulation Navy PT gear doing little to stop the chill. At 5 feet 4 inches and 118 pounds, she looked more like a college student than a warrior. Her red hair, pulled tight into a regulation bun, caught the early morning light. Freckles dusted across pale skin gave her an almost innocent appearance. The face of someone who should be teaching elementary school, not attempting to earn a Navy SEAL trident. 47 pairs of eyes watched her. 47 male trainees, most of them towering over her by 6 inches or more, most of them outweighing her by 60 pounds or more. The mathematics of physical disadvantage spelled out in flesh and bone. She could feel their judgment like pressure against her skin. Not all of them were hostile. Some were merely curious, some uncertain, some probably rooting for her in quiet, private ways they'd never voice aloud. But enough of them radiated contempt to make the air itself feel heavier. A whistle cut through the morning air, sharp, commanding, final. "Listen up!" Master Chief Garrett Sullivan stood before them like a monument to military tradition. 58 years old, 6 feet tall, shoulders that looked carved from granite. His face told the story of 3 decades in uniform. Deep lines around eyes that had seen combat in Grenada, Panama, and most recently the deserts of Kuwait. The trident on his chest gleamed in the morning light, that small golden eagle clutching an anchor, a flintlock pistol, and a trident, the symbol every man here dreamed of earning. Sullivan's voice carried without effort, trained over decades to cut through chaos. "I spent 25 years earning this." He tapped the trident with one thick finger. "Fought in Grenada in 83, jumped into Panama in 89. Just got back from Kuwait, where I watched some of the finest warriors this country has ever produced go door to door against the Republican Guard." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across every face. "I don't care about your gender, don't care about your race, don't care if your daddy's a 4-star general or a garbage man. I care about one thing. Can you save your teammate's life when everything's gone to hell and the world's on fire?" His eyes found Alexis, stayed there. "Especially you, Brennan. Prove me wrong about my doubts." Alexis met his stare without flinching. Inside her head, a different voice spoke, cold and analytical. Day 1 of Operation Wraith Hunt. Subject X has been leaking classified Desert Storm intelligence to SVR contacts. Must maintain cover as struggling trainee. Sullivan has my real file. He knows. Everyone else cannot know. She let uncertainty flicker across her face, let her shoulders hunch slightly, as if intimidated, let herself look small. Sullivan held her gaze for one more second, then moved on. "Equipment check in 5. PT course in 10. Welcome to hell, people. The day's training was exactly that, hell. 18 hours of punishment disguised as physical conditioning. Obstacle courses that left muscles screaming. Runs that tested the limits of cardiovascular endurance. Drills in the cold Pacific surf that turned skin blue and made teeth chatter uncontrollably. Alexis performed with careful mediocrity. Not too fast, not too slow. Finishing in the middle of the pack, struggling visibly with obstacles she could have conquered easily, creating the appearance of someone working at maximum capacity just to keep up. The performance took its own toll, falling when she could have succeeded, stumbling when her balance was perfect, making everything look harder than it was. By the time the sun set over the Pacific, her body ached from the deliberate inefficiency of it all. The communal shower area filled with steam as evening finally arrived. The water ran hot, a blessing after hours in the cold surf. Alexis stood under the spray, letting the heat work on muscles she deliberately strained. She heard them before she saw them. The shift in energy, like a predator entering a clearing. The way other women in the shower suddenly found reasons to leave, grabbing towels and disappearing with practice speed. 3 women remained. 3 particular women who'd made their opinions clear from day one. Sloane Mercer stood tallest at 5'9", all lean muscle and Texas confidence. Blonde hair darkened by water, blue eyes cold as winter sky. Her family had served in every American conflict since World War II. She wore that legacy like armor. Tessa Vaughn, shorter but broader, had the build of a competitive powerlifter. Brown hair cropped military short, jaw that could have been carved from stone. Her older brother had earned his trident in 1989, and she'd made sure everyone knew it. Marlo Dixon completed the trio. 5'7", African-American, with an athlete's grace and a mathematician's eyes that calculated everything. She'd scored highest on written exams and never let anyone forget it. They stood blocking the exit, casual, deliberate, dangerous. Sloane spoke first, her drawl somehow making contempt sound almost polite. Look at Brennan, barely bigger than a high school cheerleader. This is SEAL training, sugar, not homecoming court. Alexis continued washing, pretending not to hear. The water ran hot enough to turn her skin pink, steam rising in clouds around her. Tessa picked up the thread. My brother earned his trident in '89, top of his class. He'd be ashamed to see this charity case polluting the program. Alexis reached for her towel, moved slowly, deliberately, keeping her body language submissive, non-threatening. Marlo blocked her path, not touching, just present. A wall of judgment made flesh. It's not about gender, Marlo said, voice clinical and cold. It's about standards. She's going to get someone killed in the field, someone who deserves to be here. The other women in the shower had all left now, just the 4 of them in the steam and spray. The white noise of water on tile made the moment feel isolated, private, like anything could happen here and the world would never know. Alexis wrapped the towel around herself, met each woman's eyes in turn. This was the critical moment, the point where many would break, would defend themselves, would escalate into confrontation that drew attention and scrutiny. Instead, she kept her voice quiet, almost gentle. I appreciate your concern, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Sloane laughed, sharp, dismissive. Right. Tell me, what makes you think you can handle missions that have broken men twice your size? What makes you think you deserve to be here? Alexis considered her words carefully. She could have mentioned her real service record, could have revealed the classified operations, the combat decorations, the 5 years leading SEAL Team 7 through some of the darkest places on Earth. Could have told them about the confirmed kills, the successful extractions, the intelligence gathered under conditions that would make this training look like summer camp. Instead, she said simply, I guess we'll find out during training. She moved toward the exit. They parted, letting her pass. But Tessa's voice followed her. Training's one thing, Real combat is different. When bullets start flying and lives are on the line, you really think your teammates are going to trust someone who looks like she should be teaching kindergarten? Alexis paused at the door, turned back. Let them see something in her eyes. Just a flicker, just a glimpse of something colder and harder than they expected. If they don't trust me, that's their mistake to make. Then she was gone, leaving them standing in the steam. The mess hall buzzed with conversation as trainees filed in for evening chow. Exhausted bodies fueling up for another day of hell tomorrow. Alexis took her tray to a corner table, as she had every night for the past week. Alone, isolated, exactly as her cover required. She ate mechanically, watching, always watching, cataloging who sat with whom, who avoided whom, the social dynamics that revealed character and motivation. Sloane held court at a central table, surrounded by admirers. Tessa and Marlowe flanked her like bodyguards. The queen and her court, dispensing judgment on everyone who didn't measure up to their standards. Across the room, Commander Nathan Cross sat with other administrative officers. 48 years old, according to his file. Mid-level bureaucrat who kept the machinery running while warriors did the actual fighting. Unremarkable, forgettable. Except Alexis had learned never to trust the unremarkable ones. She finished her meal, bussed her tray, walked toward the exit. Brennan, Sloane's voice carried across the mess hall. Conversation died. Every head turned. Alexis stopped, turned slowly, let uncertainty show on her face. Sloane stood, walked toward her with predatory confidence. Tessa and Marlowe followed. The three women formed a semicircle, blocking Alexis against the wall. "We've been talking," Sloane said, voice loud enough for the entire room to hear, "about whether you actually belong in this program, about whether you're wasting everyone's time." Murmurs rippled through the watching crowd, some uncomfortable, some eager for confrontation. "That's your opinion," Alexis said quietly. "You're entitled to it." "It's not just opinion, it's observable fact." Marlowe stepped closer. "You finished last in the timed run today, second to last in the obstacle course. Your PT scores are barely passing. The numbers don't lie." "Maybe she's trying her best," someone called out. A few scattered laughs. "That's the problem," Tessa said. "If this is her best, she doesn't belong here. SEAL teams don't have room for weakness." Alexis felt dozens of eyes on her, watching to see how she'd respond. Whether she'd break, whether she'd fight back or crumble, she chose neither. "You're right," she said simply. "My scores are low. I'm struggling with aspects of the training, but I'm still here, still trying, still showing up every day." "Until you wash out," Sloane said, "which will be soon, then you can go find something more suited to your abilities." The dismissal was clear. Conversation resumed around them. The confrontation was over, Sloane's dominance established, Alexis put firmly in her place. Alexis walked away, head down, shoulders slumped. The perfect picture of someone beaten down by superior force. She walked out of the mess hall into the darkness beyond. Outside in the parking lot shadows, a figure lowered a telephoto camera. The rapid clicks of the shutter had captured every moment of the confrontation, every face, every gesture. The figure pulled out a satellite phone, encrypted, untraceable, spoke in Russian. Subject Brennan displayed tactical awareness during confrontation. Recommend elevated surveillance. She may be more than she appears. A pause, listening to the response. "Da, I will maintain observation. Cross has not been alerted." The call ended. The figure melted back into shadows. Another ghost, watching the hunter who hunted ghosts. Alexis, walking back toward her barracks, felt eyes on her back. Years of combat had honed instincts that civilians never developed. Someone was watching, someone professional. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge the feeling, just filed it away in her mental database of threats to track. The game had more players than she'd realized. Night fell across Coronado like a curtain. The base quieted as personnel filtered into barracks, exhausted from another day of punishment disguised as training. Alexis sat in the darkness of her rack, tablet hidden under her blanket, its glow barely visible. She reviewed surveillance logs from the past 72 hours, movement patterns, access times, digital breadcrumbs left by someone who thought they were being careful. Commander Nathan Cross, age listed as 48, administrative officer, personnel management, never deployed to combat, never earned a warfare qualification. The kind of officer who kept the bureaucratic machinery running while warriors went downrange to do the actual fighting. Except, surveillance footage showed him accessing the secure server room at odd hours. Nothing egregious, he had legitimate reasons to be there. But the timing felt wrong. Tuesday night at 21:47 hours, staying for exactly 8 minutes. Wednesday morning at 03:42 hours, staying for 12 minutes. Thursday evening at 20:33 hours, 11 minutes. Each visit short enough to avoid suspicion, long enough to photograph documents with a miniature camera. Professional tradecraft, the kind learned over years of practice. Alexis pulled up Cross's personnel photo. Standard military headshot, flat expression, regulation haircut. 48 years old, born 1943, joined Navy in 1975. She ran the math again. If he joined in 1975 at age 32, that meant he was born in 1943, which made him 48 in 1991. The numbers aligned perfectly, too perfectly. She pulled up a different file, a classified NATO security conference from 1985. Group photo of American naval officers stationed in West Germany. Third from left, second row, Lieutenant Nathan Cross. Caption beneath the photo, Lieutenant Nathan Cross, age 28, assigned to NATO Naval Liaison Office, Bonn. If Cross was 28 in 1985, that meant he was born in 1957, which made him 34 in 1991, not 48. Someone was lying. Either the 1985 photo caption was wrong, or the current personnel file was wrong. Or Nathan Cross wasn't Nathan Cross at all. Alexis opened a new search window, typed in Cross, Nathan, Lieutenant, death records, 1970 to 1980. 3 results, 2 heart attacks, wrong age bracket, 1 training accident. She opened the third file. Cross, Nathan James, Lieutenant, United States Navy, died March 15, 1974. Cause, training accident, Coronado Naval Special Warfare Center. Body recovered, cremated per family request. Death certificate signed by Dr. Yuri Volkov, visiting medical officer, Soviet Embassy Cultural Exchange Program. Alexis read that last line 3 times. Soviet Embassy medical officer signed the death certificate for an American naval officer who died in a training accident. The real Nathan Cross died in 1974. Someone took his identity. Someone who'd been pretending to be Nathan Cross for 17 years. Someone patient, professional, disciplined enough to maintain a legend across nearly 2 decades of service. Someone who was still here, still active, still dangerous. Alexis closed the tablet, lay back in the darkness. Tomorrow she'd jump from a perfectly good airplane at 25,000 feet with 5 women who thought she was weak. Tomorrow she'd maintain her cover while watching for any sign that Subject X was preparing to move. Tomorrow she'd prove that appearing weak was the deadliest advantage a warrior could have. In the darkness, she smiled. They never saw her coming. They never did. The morning briefing room smelled of coffee and testosterone. 47 male trainees filled most of the seats. Alexis sat near the back, making herself small, taking notes with the diligence of someone trying too hard. Sullivan stood at the front, a topographical map of Kuwait spread across the wall behind him. Tomorrow's exercise will test your ability to work as a team under extreme pressure. Halo insertion simulation. High altitude, low opening. 25,000 feet, oxygen pre-breathing, precision landing in a 50-meter target zone. He let that sink in. Halo jumps separated amateurs from professionals. The altitude meant supplemental oxygen, extreme cold, and the constant threat of hypoxia, making you stupid just when you needed to be smartest. The precision required meant mastering free-fall tracking, reading winds at multiple altitudes, and landing within meters of your designated zone. Teams of 6, Sullivan continued, assigned by me, no arguments, no complaints. You jump with who I tell you to jump with. A screen descended from the ceiling. Names appeared in groups of 6. Alexis found her name fourth in the second group. Her teammates, Sloan Mercer, Tessa Vaughn, Marlo Dixon, Rowan Blake, Quinn Harper. Across the room, Sloan saw the list at the same moment. Her groan carried clearly. Perfect, we got the weak link. Guess we're carrying dead weight. Tessa's response came loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe she'll wash out during the jump, save us all the trouble. A few uncomfortable laughs. More silence. The room felt charged with tension, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Then a voice from the front, unexpected and sharp. Or maybe we focus on the mission instead of tearing down teammates. Lieutenant Rowan Blake. Quiet until now, the kind of person who observed more than she spoke. 29 years old, brown hair, lean build, eyes that missed nothing. She'd been in the program for 2 months longer than Alexis and had never said more than 10 words to her. Sloan turned that cold blue stare on Rowan. You defending her makes me wonder about you too, Blake. Rowan met the challenge without flinching. I'm defending the idea that we're supposed to be professionals. Act like it. The tension ratcheted higher. Sullivan let it build for exactly 3 seconds. Then his voice cut through like a blade. Mercer, Vaughn, Dixon, Blake, Brennan, Harper, my office, after dismissal. Sullivan's office had the Spartan efficiency of a man who'd spent his entire adult life in the military. A desk, 3 chairs, filing cabinets locked with serious hardware. On the wall, photographs from 3 decades of service. Young Sullivan in Grenada, older Sullivan in Panama, recent Sullivan in desert camouflage, with Kuwait's oil fires burning on the horizon behind him. The 6 women stood in a rough semicircle. Sullivan sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, studying each of them in turn. When he spoke, his voice carried a different quality than it did on the training grounds. Quieter, more personal. The voice of a man who'd earned the right to be heard. Here's what's going to happen tomorrow. You're going to board a C-130 at 0600. You're going to climb to 25,000 feet. You're going to jump into thin air, moving at over 100 miles an hour. You're going to trust the equipment, trust your training, and trust each other. He paused. Here's what's not going to happen. You're not going to let personal feelings compromise mission effectiveness. You're not going to let ego override judgment. And you're damn sure not going to let anyone die because you were too busy being petty to focus on keeping your teammates alive. His eyes found Sloan. Mercer, your family's legacy is impressive. Your brother's trident is impressive. None of that means anything if you can't lead a team through a successful operation. Tomorrow, you'll get a chance to prove you're more than just a famous name. Then Tessa. Vaughn, strength is valuable. Intimidation is cheap. Learn the difference. Then Marlo. Dixon, intelligence without wisdom is just data. Think about that. Then Rowan, and his voice softened slightly. Blake, thank you for speaking up. Takes courage to challenge groupthink. Then Quinn Harper, who'd been silent this whole time, blonde and small and terrified. Harper, you're here because you earned it. Don't let anyone tell you different. Finally, his gaze settled on Alexis. For just a moment, something passed between them, a recognition, an understanding. Brennan, prove me wrong about my doubts. But the way he said it carried a different meaning than it had that morning. A message hidden in plain sight. Dismissed. Be at the airfield at 05:30. Don't be late. They filed out. But as Alexis reached the door, Sullivan's voice stopped her. Brennan, a word. The others left. The door closed. Suddenly the office felt very small and very quiet. Sullivan opened a drawer, pulled out a file folder, spread it on the desk between them. The pages inside were heavily redacted. Black bars covered names, locations, dates, but enough remained visible to tell a story. Combat operations, classified deployments, decorations for valor, with the specific actions redacted for security. Commander sent me this 3 weeks ago, Sullivan said quietly. Your real file, the one with classifications so high I needed to sign 6 different non-disclosure agreements just to look at it. Alexis said nothing, waited. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan, SEAL Team 7, 5 years in command, 47 successful operations, 3 Navy crosses, contents classified. Currently assigned to Naval Intelligence Special Projects Division, investigating security breach at this facility. He closed the file. Operation Wraith Hunt. Subject X, Soviet operative embedded in U.S. military infrastructure, still active despite USSR collapse. Suspected of leaking Desert Storm operational protocols to SVR contacts. Finally, Alexis spoke. You're read into the operation, Master Chief? As of 3 weeks ago, I'm your cover story. The hard-ass instructor who rides you harder than everyone else, makes you look like you're struggling to keep up. And what do you actually think? Sullivan smiled, just barely. The expression of a man who'd seen too much to be easily impressed, but was impressed anyway. I think you're the most dangerous person in this facility, and everyone's too busy looking at your size to notice. I think you've deliberately tanked every performance metric to stay invisible, and I think whoever we're hunting has no idea what's coming for them. He stood, extended his hand. It's an honor to work with you, Commander. Alexis shook his hand. Firm grip, mutual respect between warriors. The honor's mine, Captain. Sullivan blinked, glanced down at the file, at the classification level stamped across the top. How did you... Your real rank is Captain, Naval Intelligence. You've been undercover here for 6 months, investigating the same leak from a different angle. Joint Task Force, need-to-know basis. Neither of us was told about the other until absolutely necessary. Sullivan laughed quietly, shook his head. Should have known. When this is over, Commander, remind me to buy you a beer. When this is over, Captain, I'll hold you to that. Dawn broke cold and clear across the airfield. The C-130 Hercules sat waiting, its 4 turboprop engines ticking as ground crew completed pre-flight checks. The aircraft looked ancient, scarred by decades of service, patches welded over patches on the fuselage. But the engines were maintained to perfection, and the safety record was spotless. 48 personnel suited up in the hangar. Oxygen pre-breathing had started an hour ago, purging nitrogen from bloodstreams to prevent decompression sickness at altitude. Everyone wore thick jumpsuits against the cold, parachute harnesses checked and rechecked, altimeters tested, reserve chutes inspected by riggers who signed their names to each pack. Literal signatures of responsibility. Because if that reserve failed to open, someone died. Alexis ran through her equipment check with practiced efficiency. Main chute, MC-4 ram air, packed 6 days ago, well within currency. Reserve chute, tested, current, verified. Oxygen system, full bottle, regulator functioning, mask sealed. Altimeter, calibrated, functioning, backup wrist unit verified. Radio, encrypted frequency, tested, spare battery. She moved with careful mediocrity. Not too fast, not too slow. Asking questions she already knew answers to. Creating the appearance of someone thorough but nervous. Sloane stood 10 feet away, going through her own checks with aggressive efficiency. Every movement broadcast confidence. Every gesture said, "I belong here. I'm better than this. I should be leading warriors into combat instead of babysitting a charity case." Tessa and Marlowe flanked her, a match set of judgment and contempt. Rowan Blake worked through her checks with methodical precision, speaking to no one, focused entirely on equipment. Quinn Harper looked terrified. Her hands shook slightly as she tested her oxygen regulator. This would be her first halo jump. The anxiety rolled off her in waves. Sullivan moved through the hangar, checking each jumper personally. When he reached Alexis, he made a show of examining her equipment with extra scrutiny. "Brennan, main chute? Packed 6 days ago, Master Chief. Verified by rigor, logged, current. Reserve? Tested, inspected, current. Oxygen system? Full bottle, tested, sealed." He nodded, stepped closer, voice dropping just low enough that only she could hear. "Cross is on the flight manifest. Observer status. Watch him." Then louder for everyone nearby. "Get your head in the game, Brennan. This isn't practice. People die on halo jumps when they make mistakes." "Yes, Master Chief." He moved on, the performance complete, the hard-ass instructor riding his weakest student. At 0600 precisely, Sullivan's voice boomed across the hangar. "Load up! Move with purpose!" 48 bodies surged toward the C-130, weighted down with equipment, moving in that distinctive shuffle of parachutists carrying 50 pounds of gear on their backs. The ramp at the rear of the aircraft yawned open like a mouth, red interior lights casting everything in hellish crimson. Alexis followed her team aboard, found her assigned position along the port side. Sloane sat across from her. Tessa and Marlowe flanked Sloane like bodyguards. Rowan sat silent, eyes closed, probably running jump procedures through her head. Quinn looked like she might throw up. And near the front of the aircraft, in an observer seat, Commander Nathan Cross. 48 years old, according to his file. 34 years old, according to mathematics. Dead since 1974, according to death records. He wore civilian clothes, khakis, jacket, notebook in his lap. Just another administrative officer checking on training operations. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Except Alexis watched him watch the jumpers. Watched the way his eyes cataloged equipment, noted procedures, assessed capabilities. The attention was too focused, too professional. The gaze of someone gathering intelligence, not someone observing for administrative purposes. The engines spooled up. The aircraft shuddered. The ramp closed with hydraulic finality. They were committed now. The C-130 taxied, accelerated, lifted. The moment of transition when metal and will defied gravity and became something else. A platform for warriors, a delivery system for violence, a bridge between earth and sky. 25,000 feet, thin air and cold that could kill. And somewhere in that aircraft, a ghost who'd been hiding for 17 years. Alexis checked her oxygen mask one more time, settled into her seat, and waited for someone to make a mistake. The C-130 climbed through 20,000 feet. Inside the cargo bay, temperature dropped toward freezing. Breath condensed in clouds, even through oxygen masks. The aircraft's hull groaned and flexed, metal protesting the thin air and brutal cold. Alexis sat motionless, conserving energy, watching. Across from her, Sloane ran through mental checklists, lips moving slightly behind her mask. Tessa stared at the opposite wall with warrior's intensity, psyching herself up. Marlowe's eyes were closed, but her fingers tapped against her knee in nervous rhythm. Quinn Harper trembled. Not from cold, from fear. The jump master stood near the rear ramp, one hand on a support strap, checking his instruments. Former SEAL, 20 years of experience, every jump by the book. He moved forward through the cargo bay, inspecting each jumper one final time. When he reached Alexis, his eyes lingered for just a moment. Something passed between them. Recognition. He'd seen her real file too. knew exactly who sat in that seat wearing the mask of mediocrity. He gave her gear one perfunctory check and moved on. At 22,000 feet, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. 5 minutes to jump altitude. Jump masters prepare for drop. The jump master returned to the rear of the aircraft, hit the switch. The ramp began to lower with hydraulic whine. Wind screamed into the cargo bay, a physical force that pressed against everything, tried to suck loose items toward the opening void. The view beyond the ramp was crystalline blue sky above, California desert below, the horizon curved by altitude. From this height, the world looked peaceful, abstract, like a map instead of reality. Sloane stood first, led her team toward the ramp. Alexis followed last, as assigned, the weakest link bringing up the rear. The jump master gave final instructions through hand signals. Wind made verbal communication impossible now. Check equipment, check team, check sky. At 25,000 feet, the jump lights switched from red to green. Go, go, go! Sloane launched herself into space, disappeared into blue. Tessa followed 2 seconds later, then Marlowe, then Rowan, then Quinn, hesitating for just a heartbeat before commitment. Then Alexis. She stepped off the ramp and fell into sky. The transition was always shocking. Solid aircraft deck to infinite void in one step. The wind hit like a physical blow, accelerating her instantly to terminal velocity. 120 miles per hour, the speed where air resistance equals gravitational pull. The speed where human body stops accelerating and just falls. Through her goggles, the world wheeled and spun. She stabilized, arched her back, spread her arms and legs, found the stable position where she could control her fall instead of letting physics control her. Below her, spread across a mile of sky, her team fell in loose formation. They'd trained for this, maintaining relative position during freefall, tracking toward a common point, coordinating without words because words were impossible at terminal velocity. Sloane fell in front position, natural leader, assuming command. Tessa and Marlowe flanked her. Rowan tracked slightly left, and Quinn was spinning. Not the gentle rotation of someone adjusting position, the violent tumble of someone who'd lost stability, whose body position was wrong, whose fear had overridden training. Alexis watched Quinn accelerate the spin, watched her try to correct and make it worse, watched her altitude indicator tick down through 20,000 feet, 19,000, 18,000. At 15,000 feet, Quinn's main chute deployed. It came out tangled. The pilot chute deployed correctly, pulling the main canopy from its pack. But the lines were fouled. Instead of inflating into a rectangular wing, the canopy whipped and snapped, half inflated, lines twisted into an impossible knot. Quinn spun faster now, chute adding drag without providing lift, just making everything worse. Her scream carried even through the wind. Sloane saw it, dove toward Quinn, but the angles were wrong. In freefall, you can track laterally, move across the sky by changing body position, but the physics are cruel. To close 100 yards horizontally means falling hundreds of feet vertically. Sloane couldn't reach her in time. Tessa tried. Same problem, same physics, same impossible geometry. Quinn fell through 12,000 feet, 10,000. Her reserve chute had a safety device that would auto-deploy at 3,000 feet, but the tangled main could prevent the reserve from inflating correctly. 2 tangled chutes were worse than one. 9,000 feet. Quinn's fingers clawed at her reserve handle. Found it, pulled. Nothing happened. The reserve deployment handle had jammed. Maybe ice from condensation. Maybe a mechanical failure. Maybe just bad luck. In skydiving, there were 1,000 ways to die, and equipment failure was always on the list. 8,000 feet. Alexis made a decision. She transitioned from stable arch to maximum speed dive, brought her arms tight to her sides, legs together, body streamlined into a dart. In this position, terminal velocity increased from 120 miles per hour to 180. Straight down, maximum velocity. Every second of hesitation meant more feet Quinn fell toward death. The wind became violence, pressure that felt like it would tear her apart. Her goggles fogged from the speed. Her cheeks rippled from G-forces. 7,000 feet. Alexis tracked laterally at 180 miles per hour, closing the distance to Quinn with geometry that should have been impossible. Her body made micro-adjustments, a shift of hand position here, a turn of head there, that translated into lateral movement at speeds that tested the limits of human capability. 6,000 feet. She reached Quinn at 5,500 feet, grabbed Quinn's harness with both hands, used her own body as counterweight to stop the spin. The deceleration was brutal. Her shoulder screamed. Her grip on Quinn's harness held by pure will. The spins stopped. Quinn's tangled main chute still streamed uselessly above them, but at least they weren't rotating anymore. 4,500 feet. Alexis reached across Quinn's chest, found the reserve handle, ripped it free from its housing with force that bent metal. The reserve pilot chute deployed, pulled the reserve canopy out. For one terrible second, Alexis thought it would tangle with the main, and they both die in a mess of lines and fabric and failure. Then the reserve inflated. Clean deployment, full canopy, proper flight characteristics. Quinn's descent slowed from 120 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour. Alexis released her grip, fell away, deployed her own main at 3,000 feet. Her canopy opened perfectly, smooth inflation, no drama. She looked up. Quinn hung in her harness above, reserve chute fully deployed, alive. Alexis looked down. The desert rushed up to meet her. She landed with textbook precision in the center of her target zone. 50-meter circle marked in the sand. Her boots hit dirt. She ran forward to collapse the canopy, and she was down. Safe. Successful. Around the landing zone, other chutes descended. Sloane hit hard, stumbling forward but staying upright. Tessa landed rough, going to her knees. Marlowe came in fast but controlled. Rowan executed a perfect stand-up landing. Quinn drifted past the target zone by 200 yards, hit hard, rolled wrong. But she was alive, breathing, shaking, but alive. Sullivan's Humvee roared across the sand. He jumped out before it fully stopped, ran toward the landing zone with surprising speed for a man his age. His eyes found Alexis first. "Brennan!" His voice carried that parade ground authority. "What the hell was that?" Alexis stood at attention, let confusion cross her face. "Master Chief? That tracking maneuver, that dive speed, that catch, that's not basic Halo qualification. That's Halo Team 6 level skill. Special mission unit capability." He stepped closer. "Where did you learn to track at 180 miles per hour? The other women had gathered now, forming a semicircle, all of them staring at Alexis with new eyes. Calculating, reassessing. Alexis kept her voice uncertain. Adrenaline? I just reacted. Harper was in trouble and Bullshit. Sloane's voice cut across the explanation. She pulled off her helmet, blonde hair matted with sweat. Nobody tracks that fast without serious training. Professional training. Military freefall instructor level. Tessa pulled off her own helmet. You saved Quinn's life. That's not in question. But you just performed a maneuver that takes years to master. Years of training you're not supposed to have. Marlowe studied Alexis like a mathematical equation that didn't balance. Who are you, really? The desert wind blew sand across the landing zone. Somewhere overhead, the C-130 banked away, mission complete, already heading back to base. Sullivan held up one hand. Enough. Brennan saved a teammate. That's what matters. Questions can wait. But the damage was done. The cover was compromised. 5 women now looked at Alexis and saw something that didn't match the story they'd been told. Rowan Blake stood slightly apart from the others. Her expression was different. Not surprised, not confused, calculating, like she'd been expecting this. Sullivan jerked his head toward the Humvees. Load up, debrief in 1 hour. Brennan, ride with me. The women separated into different vehicles. Quinn needed medical evaluation even though she was uninjured, protocol after equipment failure. The others climbed into transport trucks. Alexis and Sullivan took the lead Humvee. As soon as the doors closed, Sullivan's demeanor changed. He started the engine, but didn't put it in gear yet. You blew your cover. I saved her life. I know, right call, but now they know you're not what you pretend to be. They suspect, they don't know. Sullivan looked at her. Commander, that tracking maneuver? I've seen Halo Team 6 operators who couldn't pull that off. You just told everyone watching that you're elite special operations. There's no walking that back. Alexis stared through the windshield at the desert. Then we escalate, move to Phase 2 ahead of schedule. Which is? Partial disclosure. I'm investigating a security breach. I've been undercover. Some truth, not all truth. Sullivan nodded slowly. Risky, but we're past the point of perfect cover. Might as well control the narrative. He put the Humvee in gear, started driving across the desert toward base. For what it's worth, Commander, that was the finest piece of flying I've seen in 30 years. Quinn Harper is alive because you're better than everyone thinks. She's alive because physics worked out. Another 2 seconds, different outcome. Most people freeze in crisis. You executed. Sullivan glanced at her. Your team's lucky to have you, even if they don't know it yet. The base appeared on the horizon, cluster of buildings against sand and sky. Somewhere in those buildings, Commander Nathan Cross was waiting, watching, planning. Alexis checked her watch. They'd been airborne for 90 minutes. Time for Cross to access the secure server room. Time to photograph documents. Time to pass intelligence to handlers who were probably already gone, disappeared back into civilian cover. Master Chief, we need to check the server room, now. After debrief. Before, if Cross accessed it during the jump, evidence will be fresh. Wait too long, he'll sanitize. Sullivan's jaw tightened. He took a hard right, detouring away from the main buildings toward the communications center. Concrete bunker with serious security, armed guards at the entrance. They pulled up. Sullivan flashed his credentials. Master Chief Sullivan and Lieutenant Brennan, security inspection. The guard checked his roster, frowned. Sir, you're not on the access list for today. Sullivan leaned out the window, let his voice drop into that dangerous register of senior enlisted who dealt with too much bureaucratic nonsense. Son, do I look like I'm asking permission? There was an equipment failure on a Halo jump 30 minutes ago. We're investigating whether there's a connection to previous security incidents. Now either open that gate or explain to the base commander why you obstructed an investigation. The guard hesitated, looked at his partner, made a decision. Yes, Master Chief. The gate rolled open. Sullivan parked. He and Alexis walked toward the entrance. Sullivan spoke quietly. What are we looking for? Anything. Disturbance in dust patterns. Equipment moved. Documentation logged incorrectly. Cross is careful, but everyone makes mistakes. They entered the communications center, showed credentials again. Were escorted to the secure server room by a junior technician who looked nervous about having senior personnel conducting surprise inspections. The server room hummed with electronics, racks of equipment, cables running everywhere, climate control maintaining exact temperature and humidity, standard setup for classified communications infrastructure. Alexis walked slowly around the perimeter, looking, assessing, not touching anything yet. Then she saw it. One server rack, the one containing personnel files and operational databases, had a small piece of tape stuck to the side. Transparent tape, barely visible. The kind used to mark a position so you could tell if something had been moved. She pointed without touching. That rack. Check the access logs. The technician typed on a nearby terminal. Server 7 Alpha. Last accessed 06:15 this morning, during the Halo jump, while everyone was focused on the airfield. Perfect timing. Who accessed it? Commander Nathan Cross, Personnel Management Review. He has standing authorization. Sullivan and Alexis exchanged a look. Pull up the specific files accessed, Sullivan ordered. More typing. A list appeared on screen. Personnel files for SEAL Team 3, currently deployed to Persian Gulf. Operational procedures for desert reconnaissance. Communications protocols for joint operations with allied forces. All classified, all valuable to foreign intelligence services. All accessed during a window when Cross knew security attention would be focused elsewhere. Alexis took out her phone, photographed the screen, photographed the tape marker, photographed the server logs. Thank you, Petty Officer, we're done here. They walked out, climbed back in the Humvee. Sullivan didn't start the engine yet. That's enough for arrest, he said. We can take him now. No, if we take him now, we lose his network. He's reporting to someone, passing intel to handlers. We need to identify the full chain. How? Let him run. Follow him to his contact. Catch everyone. Sullivan shook his head. Commander, with respect, that's a gamble. If he suspects we're onto him, he'll rabbit, disappear. We'll lose him completely. He won't run, not yet. USSR is collapsing. His handlers in Moscow are probably in chaos. He thinks he's safe because he's been safe for 17 years. He'll make one more transmission, try to extract maximum value before the Soviet system completely falls apart. You're betting lives on that assessment. I'm betting my career. If I'm wrong, I'll answer for it. Sullivan studied her face, saw certainty there, the kind of certainty that came from years of running operations, making calls under pressure, living with consequences. Your operation, Commander, your call. He started the engine, drove toward the main complex where 5 women waited with questions that would need answers. The communications center fell behind them. Somewhere in that building, in those logs, evidence existed that Commander Nathan Cross was something other than what he claimed. But evidence wasn't enough. They needed the network, the handlers, the full picture of how deep Soviet intelligence had penetrated American military infrastructure, which meant letting the ghost run a little longer. The mess hall had been cleared for the debrief. Just the 6 women from the Halo team, Sullivan, and now 2 additional personnel Alexis hadn't met, base security officers who introduced themselves as Lieutenant Reynolds and Sergeant Morrison. Everyone sat around a long table, coffee in paper cups, the smell of anxiety and suspicion mixing with the smell of institutional food from the kitchen nearby. Sloan spoke first. We need to talk about what happened up there. Sullivan raised a hand. First, Harper. You okay? Quinn nodded. She'd been examined by medical, cleared for duty. No injuries except bruised ego and shaken confidence. I'm fine, Master Chief, thanks to Brennan. All eyes turned to Alexis. Tessa leaned forward. That tracking maneuver, that catch, that's not normal capability. You performed like special mission unit operator. Marlowe added, your service record has gaps, classification redactions. We looked you up after the jump. Normal trainees don't have that level of security on their files. Rowan Blake sat silent, watching, that calculating expression still on her face. Alexis made a decision, looked at Sullivan. He gave a tiny nod. She stood, walked to the head of the table, let silence build for 3 seconds. You're right, I'm not a normal trainee. The room tensed. I'm investigating a security breach. Classified SEAL intelligence has been leaking to foreign services. I've been undercover for 3 months, trying to identify the source. Shock rippled through the group. Sloane's mouth opened. Tessa sat back hard in her chair. Marlowe's eyes went wide. Quinn whispered, You're, what, some kind of spy? Counterintelligence officer. Naval Intelligence Special Projects Division. I'm here to find who's been stealing our operational procedures and selling them to people who want Americans dead. Sloan found her voice. Anger colored it. 3 months. 3 months of lies. While we thought you were weak, incompetent, while I gathered evidence, Alexis cut her off. While I observed behaviors, while I identified suspects, while I did my job. Tessa stood. You think one of us is the traitor? I think someone at this facility is compromised. Could be trainee, could be instructor, could be support staff, could be anyone. The security officers exchanged glances. Lieutenant Reynolds spoke up. Lieutenant Brennan is operating under authorization from Naval Intelligence and Base Command. This investigation is legitimate and ongoing. Marlowe's analytical mind was already working through implications. What kind of intelligence is being leaked? Sullivan answered. Desert Storm operational procedures, SEAL insertion tactics, personnel identification for deployed teams, information that could get operators killed if it reaches hostile intelligence services. Rowan Blake finally spoke. Her voice was calm, too calm. When did the leak start? Alexis studied her. Approximately 6 months ago, shortly after Desert Storm ended, someone began accessing classified files, photographing documents, passing intelligence to contacts off base. And you have suspects? I have one primary subject of investigation, but I need proof, not just suspicion, proof that will hold up in federal court. Sloan's anger was giving way to something else. Horror, understanding. That's why you acted weak, why you struggled. You were hiding. I was invisible. The best cover is being exactly what people expect to see. Everyone dismissed me, including the person I'm hunting. Tessa slumped in her chair. We treated you like garbage for 3 months while you were protecting us. You treated me exactly how I needed you to treat me. You're not at fault. Quinn spoke quietly. Who is it? Who's the traitor? Alexis shook her head. I can't say yet. Not until I have conclusive evidence. But soon. The debrief continued for another hour. Questions, answers, partial truths carefully deployed. By the end, the 5 women looked exhausted. Their worldview had been shattered and reassembled in the space of 90 minutes. As they filed out, Rowan Blake lingered, waited until everyone else had left, then approached Alexis and Sullivan. But she didn't just wait, she walked to the door and locked it. The metallic click echoed in the sudden silence. Alexis and Sullivan both turned, hands instinctively moving toward concealed sidearms neither was wearing. Major Blake? Sullivan's voice carried warning. What are you doing? Rowan's expression was cold, professional. The calculating mask she'd worn for 2 months finally dropping to reveal something harder underneath. The truth is complicated, Master Chief. Commander. She moved to stand between them and the door, blocking exit. And before we go any further with this operation, we need to establish some ground rules about who's actually in command here. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alexis kept her voice level. Explain. Now. Rowan reached into her jacket. Both Sullivan and Alexis tensed. If she pulled a weapon, this would get ugly, fast. 3 combat veterans in a locked room, all trained to kill. But what emerged wasn't a gun. Defense Intelligence Agency credentials. Major Rowan Blake, Counterintelligence Division. Clearance level, TS/SCI with special access. Sullivan swore quietly. DIA, you've been here the whole time. 2 months, Rowan confirmed, assigned as backup to Commander Brennan's operation. Except Naval Intelligence didn't tell you about me, did they, Commander? Alexis felt anger rising. Need to know compartmentalization, standard interagency bullshit. Not bullshit, necessity. Rowan's voice was sharp. The Walker spy ring in the 80s? That was Naval Intelligence officers selling secrets to the Soviets. DIA doesn't trust your agency on Soviet penetration investigations. So they sent me as insurance. Insurance? Sullivan's hands clenched into fists. Or oversight, you've been watching Brennan while she was watching Cross. Both. Rowan didn't apologize. My orders were clear. Parallel investigation, independent verification, report directly to Defense Intelligence. If Commander Brennan was compromised or incompetent, I was authorized to take operational control. The accusation hung in the air like a thrown knife. Alexis stepped forward, voice dropping into command register. And your assessment, Major? Am I compromised? Incompetent? Rowan met her eyes without flinching, held the stare for 3 long seconds. Then her expression softened, marginally. Neither. Your operation has been textbook perfect. The undercover work, the evidence gathering, the way you maintain cover even after that Halo save. I've been filing reports to DIA recommending you for commendation, not replacement. She pulled out a small notebook, handed it to Alexis. Everything I've documented on Cross, encrypted transmissions, timing, protocols, it matches your surveillance almost perfectly. We've been running parallel investigations that confirm each other. That's good intelligence work. Sullivan relaxed slightly. So we're on the same side. We were always on the same side, Captain. We were just watching each other while watching the enemy. Rowan unlocked the door. Now that cards are on the table, we can coordinate properly. Cross is getting ready to run. USSR collapses in weeks. He'll make his move soon. Alexis studied the notebook. Perfect logs. Professional work. Rowan was good. Maybe as good as Alexis herself. Agreed. We force his hand. Make him panic. Follow him to his handlers. Risky, Rowan said. If he suspects trap, then we adapt. Alexis handed back the notebook. This is still my operation, Major. DIA oversight noted, but I'm running point. Rowan considered, then nodded. Fair enough, Commander. You've earned it. Let's catch this ghost. The 3 of them spent the next hour planning. Timing, wording, tone. Every detail mattered. Cross was professional. 17 years of surviving meant he'd developed sophisticated threat detection. The staged conversation had to sound real, urgent, but not so urgent that it seemed like a trap. He'll be suspicious, Rowan warned. KGB training teaches paranoia. Good, Alexis replied. Paranoid people make mistakes trying to avoid traps. He'll reach out to his handlers for emergency extraction. That's when we take him and the network. Sullivan checked his watch. 1600. Cross stays late most evenings. Works until 1730, 1800. Window of opportunity closing. They moved out. They found Cross in the administrative building, 3rd floor. His office door was closed, but lights were visible underneath. In the hallway outside, Alexis and Sullivan spoke in voices just slightly too loud, performing for an audience of 1. I'm telling you, the FBI counterintelligence team arrives tomorrow morning, Alexis said. They have arrest warrants ready. You're sure it's him? Sullivan asked. 90%. The evidence is circumstantial, but strong. They'll take him into custody, interrogate him, break him down. Tomorrow morning. Jesus. 17 years and we finally got him. They walked away. Let the silence settle. Inside his office, Commander Nathan Cross sat at his desk, hands shaking slightly, face pale. He'd heard every word. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for him to take the bait. Commander Nathan Cross sat in his office long after the voices faded down the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The clock on his wall ticked towards 1700 hours. Outside his window, the California sun descended toward the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. His hands had stopped shaking. Years of training, decades of discipline reasserted themselves. He was Viktor Fedorov, 2nd Directorate, KGB. He was a professional. Professionals didn't panic. But professionals also knew when operations were compromised. FBI counterintelligence arriving tomorrow. Arrest warrants prepared. 17 years of perfect cover, about to collapse in a single morning. He opened his desk drawer, removed a small black address book, the kind old men carried, pre-digital, impossible to hack. Inside were phone numbers, memorized codes, emergency protocols established in 1974 when he'd first assumed Nathan Cross's identity. Most of those protocols were useless now. The Soviet Union was dying. The KGB was fragmenting into successor agencies, fighting over scraps of the old empire. His handlers in Moscow had stopped responding to routine check-ins 3 months ago. But there were other numbers in that book. Non-Moscow contacts. SVR operatives who transitioned from Soviet intelligence to Russian intelligence. Men who understood that the Cold War might be ending, but the game continued. Cross picked up his phone, dialed a number in San Diego, let it ring 3 times, hung up. The signal. Emergency extraction requested. Within 6 hours, someone would call back on a different line with a time and location. He had to assume he was being watched, had to assume his office phone was monitored, his movements tracked, his communications intercepted, which meant he had one move left, one desperate play that required perfect execution and a little luck. He stood, put on his jacket, walked out of his office with the casual confidence of a man who had nothing to hide. 200 yards away, in a surveillance vehicle disguised as a maintenance truck, Alexis watched Cross through binoculars. He's moving. Rowan sat next to her, monitoring electronic surveillance. Phone call logged. 3 rings. No conversation. Classic emergency signal. Sullivan spoke from the driver's seat. "Where's he going?" Alexis tracked Cross across the parking lot. "His car. He's leaving base." "Do we stop him?" "No, follow him. See where he goes." Sullivan started the engine. Stayed 3 cars back as Cross's vehicle exited the base. Through the gate, into Coronado traffic, then across the bridge into San Diego proper. Evening traffic was building. Perfect cover for surveillance. Enough vehicles that one following car would be invisible. Cross drove with careful observance of traffic laws. No speeding, no sudden turns. A man with nothing to hide, going about normal business. Except he wasn't going toward his listed residence. He was heading downtown, toward the harbor. "He's running," Sullivan said, "going for boat extraction." Rowan checked her tablet. SVR has maintained maritime assets even after Soviet collapse. Probably a contact vessel offshore. Alexis watched Cross's vehicle wind through downtown streets. He'll make one stop first, contact his handler, confirm extraction point. The vehicle turned into the parking structure of a mid-range hotel. Embassy Suites, the kind of place business travelers used. Anonymous. Forgettable. Sullivan parked half a block away. Alexis and Rowan exited quickly, moving on foot. They entered the hotel through a side entrance, split up to cover multiple sightlines. Cross walked through the lobby with purposeful stride, not hurrying, not dawdling. He went to a house phone near the elevators, picked it up, spoke briefly, hung up. Then he sat down in the lobby, picked up a newspaper, waited. Alexis positioned herself behind a decorative column. Rowan took the opposite side, partially hidden by a large plant. Both women wore civilian clothes. Both looked like hotel guests waiting for someone. 5 minutes passed, then 10. A man entered the lobby, 65 years old, gray hair, expensive suit, Eastern European features. He carried a briefcase and walked with the confidence of someone who belonged. He sat down 3 chairs away from Cross, opened his briefcase, removed a newspaper, never looked at Cross directly. Classic brush-pass setup. Cross stood, walked past the man, dropped his address book on the chair between them as he passed, kept walking toward the restrooms. The man waited 30 seconds, stood, picked up his briefcase in the address book, walked toward the exit. Alexis spoke into her concealed radio. "Target 2 exiting north entrance. Gray suit, briefcase. Don't lose him." Outside, two FBI agents who'd been read into the operation picked up surveillance. They followed Gray's suit to a Mercedes sedan, documented license plate, tracked the vehicle as it left the hotel parking lot. Inside, Cross returned from the restroom, sat down, checked his watch, then his phone buzzed. He read a text message. His face showed relief for just a moment before professional mask descended again. He stood, left the hotel, got in his car, started driving. Sullivan spoke over the radio. All units were mobile. Subject heading toward the marina. The surveillance convoy reformed. FBI vehicles front and rear. Sullivan's truck in the middle. Cross's sedan leading them all toward the waterfront like a parade of secrets. The sun had set now. Twilight painted the city in shades of purple and gray. Harbor lights began winking on along the marina. Expensive yachts and sailboats rocked gently in their slips. Cross parked in a public lot, got out, started walking toward a specific pier. Alexis exited Sullivan's vehicle. Rowan joined her. Both women moved through shadows, using boats and buildings for cover. Cross walked onto Pier 7. 3/4 of the way down, a yacht was moored. 30-footer, white hull, named Desert Victory. Someone was already aboard, visible in the cabin, preparing to cast off. Sullivan's voice crackled in Alexis's earpiece. FBI units are in position. Coast Guard cutter is 2 miles offshore, ready to intercept. We have him boxed. Alexis watched Cross step onto the yacht, watched the figure in the cabin come out on deck. The figure was female, young, African-American, Marlo Dixon. The recognition hit like a physical blow. Marlo, who'd been in the Halo training, who'd been part of the team, who'd scored highest on written exams and never let anyone forget it. Marlo, who'd spent 3 months in close proximity to Alexis, watching, assessing, reporting everything back to Cross. Rowan saw her at the same moment. Christ, Dixon, she's his accomplice. Alexis keyed her radio. All units, second subject identified. Petty Officer Marlo Dixon. Exercise caution, she's trained military personnel. The yacht's engine started, diesel rumble in the quiet evening. Marlo began untying mooring lines. Sullivan emerged from shadows onto the pier. His voice carried across the water with parade ground authority. Cross, stand down, you're surrounded. Cross froze on the deck. For a moment, genuine fear crossed his face. Then it vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Master Chief Sullivan, and Commander Brennan, I assume you're out there somewhere. Alexis stepped into the light. Let him see her. It's over. We know you're the 34th operative from Operation Nightfall. We have 17 years of evidence. Cross laughed. Actually laughed. Evidence? You have circumstantial guesses. You can't prove anything. We can prove you accessed classified files during this morning's Halo jump. We have server logs. We have photographs of your brush pass at the embassy suites. We have intercepted communications with SVR contacts. Alexis moved closer to the edge of the pier. And we have something else. What's that? Your death certificate. Nathan Cross died in 1974. Training accident at Coronado. Death certificate signed by a Soviet embassy medical officer. She paused. You're not Nathan Cross. You're Viktor Fedorov, KGB Second Directorate. You killed Cross and assumed his identity. The silence stretched. Even the water seemed to stop moving. Then Cross smiled, cold and professional. Impressive research, Commander, but I'm afraid you're still missing the full picture. Then enlighten me. Nathan Cross wasn't murdered. He was recruited. He agreed to fake his death, go to Moscow, provide intelligence on SEAL training methods in exchange for money and ideology. Cross spread his hands. I didn't kill him. I just took his place after he defected. Prove it. I don't need to prove anything. You need to prove your case in court. Good luck with that when your evidence chain relies on documents from 1974 and Soviet defector testimony that may or may not be reliable. He had a point. A good defense attorney could create reasonable doubt, could argue mistaken identity, forged documents, Cold War paranoia. Conviction wasn't certain, which was why Alexis needed more than Cross. She needed the network. Marlowe had finished untying the mooring lines. The yacht began drifting away from the pier. She called out across the water, "You all treated me like trash, like I didn't belong." Cross offered me $2 million to be his courier, $2 million, and all I had to do was pass his messages, photograph some documents. I was useful to someone for once. Tessa's voice came from behind Alexis. "Mars, what did you do?" Alexis turned. Sloane, Tessa, and Quinn stood at the entrance to the pier. They must have followed from base. Now they stood watching their teammate confess to treason. Marlowe's voice cracked with emotion. "You don't know what it's like, being overlooked, being dismissed. I have the highest test scores, the best technical skills, and everyone still treats me like I'm not good enough." Her voice broke completely. "My whole life I've been the smartest person in the room, top scores, perfect tests, and it never mattered. My father wanted sons. The Navy wanted, I don't even know what they wanted. But Cross, he saw value, saw what I could do. He made me feel important." She looked at the women on the pier, at the teammates who'd never truly accepted her. "So yes, I betrayed my country for $2 million, and the first time in my life someone told me I mattered. Was I stupid? Yes. Was I wrong? Yes. But I'd do anything to feel like I belong somewhere." Sloane took a step forward. "So you betrayed your country? Betrayed your teammates? People are going to die because of what you did." "Nobody dies. It's just information, just procedures and protocols." Marlowe was crying now, voice rising. "I didn't hurt anyone." "SEAL Team 3 is deployed in the Persian Gulf right now," Alexis called out, "using the operational procedures you helped Cross photograph. Procedures that are now in the hands of Iraqi intelligence. When the next conflict starts, and it will start, our operators will walk into ambushes because you wanted $2 million in validation." The yacht was 20 feet from the pier now, 30 feet. Cross was accelerating, heading for open water. Sullivan spoke into his radio. "Coast Guard, intercept authorized. Take them alive if possible." On the horizon, a cutter's searchlight snapped on. Powerful beam cutting through twilight. The cutter accelerated, moving to block the yacht's escape route. Cross saw it, understood the geometry. He couldn't outrun a Coast Guard vessel, couldn't escape the net that had closed around him. He made a decision. The yacht suddenly accelerated hard, not toward open ocean, toward the harbor entrance, toward the narrow channel where larger vessels moved in and out of port. "He's going to force a collision," Rowan said. "Create chaos so he can disappear in the confusion." Alexis ran down the pier. Sullivan and the other women followed. They reached a harbor patrol boat, small, fast, kept ready for emergencies exactly like this. Sullivan flashed credentials at the two-person crew. "Federal investigation. We're commandeering this vessel." The crew didn't argue. Sullivan took the helm. Alexis, Rowan, and the three other women piled aboard. The boat leaped forward, twin outboards screaming. They closed the distance rapidly. The yacht was fast, but the patrol boat was faster. Behind them, the Coast Guard cutter maneuvered to cut off escape routes. Cross saw them coming, saw the trap closing. He did something desperate. He grabbed Marlowe, held her in front of him like a shield, pulled a pistol from inside his jacket, small caliber, easy to conceal, deadly at close range. "Back off," his voice carried across the water. "Back off or I kill her." The patrol boat slowed. Sullivan brought it to idle 20 yards from the yacht. Marlowe struggled. "Nathan, what are you doing?" "Survival," Cross said coldly. "You were always just an asset, a useful fool. Did you really think I cared about you?" The casual cruelty in his voice made Marlowe stop struggling. She went limp in his grip, broken by the realization that she'd been used. Alexis stood at the bow of the patrol boat. Let Cross see her clearly in the patrol boat's lights. Commander Nathan Cross, or should I say, Colonel Viktor Fedorov, KGB 2nd Directorate. Cross's eyes narrowed. How do you know that rank? Because I'm not just investigating you. I've been hunting you for 5 years. Since Desert Storm, when I led SEAL Team 7 in operations that you compromised with your intelligence leaks. She paused. Men died because of you. Good men. My men. Commander? Sloan whispered behind her. What are you saying? Alexis didn't turn, kept her focus on Cross. My real name is Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan, SEAL Team 7, 5 years in command, 47 successful operations, 3 Navy Crosses for classified actions. She reached up, unzipped her jacket, let it fall. Underneath she wore her dress uniform, full insignia, ribbons from campaigns spanning 5 years, the golden trident on her chest. I'm also Major Alexis Brennan, Defense Intelligence Agency, Counterintelligence Division, Joint Task Force hunting Operation Nightfall operatives since 1989. She removed another layer, revealed DIA credentials on a lanyard. For 3 months I've let you think I was weak, incompetent, struggling to keep up with training. The perfect cover is being exactly what people expect to see. Cross's face had gone pale. I'm the warrior you never saw coming, because you were too busy looking at my size and gender to see the threat. Behind Alexis, Sullivan stepped forward. He removed his Master Chief insignia, revealed Captain's Eagles underneath. Captain Garrett Sullivan, Naval Intelligence. I've been running this operation from inside for 6 months. He looked at Cross with decades of contempt. You fooled a lot of people, Fedorov, but you didn't fool us. Rowan Blake moved next to them, showed her DIA credentials. Major Rowan Blake, Defense Intelligence Agency. Parallel investigation confirmed Commander Brennan's findings. You're done. Cross still held Marlowe as a shield, still had the pistol pressed against her temple. But his expression showed the understanding that he'd already lost. I have a hostage. You won't risk her life. No, Alexis agreed. I won't, but I also won't let you escape. She nodded to Rowan. Rowan pulled out a tablet, activated a video call. The screen showed a man in expensive suit, silver hair, sitting in what looked like a hotel room. The man from the embassy suites, gray suit. The handler, except now he wore handcuffs. FBI agents stood behind him. Your handler was arrested 30 minutes ago, Alexis said. He gave up your entire network in exchange for reduced charges. We have names, locations, communication protocols. The SVR maritime extraction vessel that was supposed to pick you up? Coast Guard already boarded it. 4 Russian intelligence officers in custody. Cross's hands shook. The pistol wavered slightly against Marlowe's head. You can't prove I'm Fedorov, can't prove I killed Nathan Cross. Your evidence is circumstantial at best. You're right, Alexis admitted. We might not be able to prove murder. The real Nathan Cross's body was cremated in 1974. No DNA evidence, no forensics. She pulled out a photograph, held it up so Cross could see in the boat's lights. But we can prove espionage. This photograph was taken in 1985, NATO Security Conference in West Germany. Shows you meeting with known KGB handler, the same handler who just confessed to running you for 17 years. Another photograph. This is from 1987. You accessing classified files at Pearl Harbor. Photographed by FBI counterintelligence who'd been suspicious but couldn't get enough evidence to arrest. Another photograph. This is from 1990. You passing documents to a Soviet diplomatic courier in Los Angeles. Again, photographed, but not enough for arrest at the time. She held up a thick folder. And this is 17 years of evidence we've been building. Phone logs, travel records, financial transactions. Every single time you accessed classified information and passed it to Soviet handlers. Every single operational procedure you compromised. Every single SEAL whose identity you exposed. She stepped forward. The patrol boat drifted closer. Your SVR contacts are in custody. Your handler confessed. Your network is rolled up. The only question left is whether Marlo Dixon dies tonight because you're too proud to admit defeat. The silence stretched across the water. The only sound was the idle of boat engines and the gentle lap of waves against hulls. Then Cross laughed, quiet and bitter. 17 years. I thought I was so careful, thought I'd covered every angle. He looked at Alexis with something approaching respect. You're good, Commander. Better than I expected. The weakness was perfect cover. Most people dismiss based on appearance. You just happened to make the same mistake everyone makes about me. What mistake is that? Thinking that size determines capability, that gender determines lethality, that looking like a kindergarten teacher means I can't be one of the most dangerous operators in naval special warfare. She moved closer still, almost within arm's reach. I'm 5'4" and 118 pounds. I've also eliminated 23 enemy combatants in direct action, led 47 successful operations, including 3 that saved hundreds of civilian lives, and just spent 3 months hunting you while pretending to be the weakest link in a training program. Another step. The deadliest weapon is the one your enemy dismisses. Cross's arm was shaking now. The pistol no longer pressed firmly against Marlo's head. Fatigue and stress were taking their toll. Let her go, Alexis said quietly. She's a fool who made terrible choices, but she doesn't deserve to die for your ego. If I let her go, you arrest me. Life in federal prison. I'll die in a cell. Yes, but you'll die knowing that your service to the Soviet Union, misguided as it was, had meaning. That you were a professional who fought for what you believed in. Or you can die tonight, a coward who murdered a stupid girl and accomplished nothing. The psychology was simple. Give him an out. Let him rationalize surrender as something other than complete defeat. Cross looked at Marlo, at the terrified young woman who thought she was making herself important by betraying everything she'd sworn to protect. I'm sorry, he said. Removed the pistol from her head. I used you. That was wrong. He released her. Marlo stumbled forward, sobbing. Quinn reached out from the patrol boat, pulled her aboard. Cross set his pistol down on the yacht deck, raised his hands. Colonel Viktor Fedorov, KGB 2nd Directorate, I surrender. FBI agents swarmed onto the yacht from the Coast Guard cutter, handcuffed Cross, read him his rights, led him away. Alexis watched until he was out of sight. Then she turned to face the women who'd spent 3 months thinking she was weak. Sloane spoke first. Her voice was hoarse. You're a SEAL commander. The whole time. You were leading missions while we were mocking you in the showers. Yes. Why? Why put yourself through that? Because the mission required it. Because good men were dying from intelligence leaks. Because someone had to find the ghost. Tessa sat down heavily in the patrol boat. We treated you like garbage. For 3 months. Said horrible things. Made your life hell. You treated me exactly how I needed you to treat me. The cover required that everyone believe I was struggling, failing, barely hanging on. You played your roles perfectly. Quinn was holding Marlo, who sobbed uncontrollably. What happens to her? Alexis looked at Marlo with something approaching pity. Federal espionage charges. She'll face trial, probably life in prison. She paused. She made choices. Now she faces consequences. Sullivan brought the patrol boat back to the pier. They climbed out in silence. The adrenaline was fading now, replaced by exhaustion and emotional whiplash. On the pier, a man waited. Civilian clothes, but military bearing. 50s, graying hair, the kind of face that had seen too many classified briefings. Commander Brennan, he extended his hand. Deputy Director Morrison, Defense Intelligence Agency. Hell of an operation. Alexis shook his hand. Thank you, sir. Captain Sullivan and Major Blake were instrumental. Morrison nodded to them, then looked at the three women from the training program. And you three just witnessed a classified counterintelligence operation. You'll be debriefed. You'll sign non-disclosure agreements. You'll never speak about this to anyone without clearance. Understood? They nodded mutely. Morrison turned back to Alexis. We're rolling up the network now. Cross's confession is leading to 4 other arrests. Operation Nightfall is officially closed. 47 operatives, Alexis said, all accounted for. Final ghost captured. Because of you. Because you were willing to endure 3 months of hell to get close to him. Morrison smiled slightly. That halo jump today, that tracking maneuver, already a legend in the intelligence community. You saved a teammate's life while maintaining operational cover. That's extraordinary tradecraft. Alexis felt the weight of 3 months lifting. The constant performance, the daily degradation, the careful balance of appearing weak while remaining capable. Permission to return to my team, sir? SEAL Team 7 has been without their commander for 3 months. Granted, they're waiting for you. Morrison checked his watch. Debrief in 72 hours. Until then, Commander, you're dismissed. He walked away. FBI agents were processing the scene. Coast Guard was securing the yacht. The normal chaos of law enforcement wrapping up a major case. Alexis stood on the pier looking at the harbor. The case was over. The ghost was caught. The mission was complete. Sloan approached hesitantly. Commander, can we talk? Alexis turned. Sloan, Tessa, and Quinn stood together. All three looked devastated. Of course, Sloan took a breath. I don't have words for how ashamed I am. For 3 months, I mocked you, belittled you, made your life as difficult as possible. I was terrible, Tessa added, said horrible things, questioned your right to be there, told you that you'd get people killed. Quinn's voice was barely a whisper. You saved my life today, and I never even thanked you properly because I was too shocked about who you really were. The three women looked broken, confronting the reality of how badly they'd misjudged someone, how thoroughly they'd been fooled by appearances. Alexis spoke gently. You saw a small woman who struggled with physical requirements. You made logical assumptions based on observable evidence. That's not shameful. That's human nature. But we were cruel, Sloan insisted. Personal attacks, deliberate humiliation. That went beyond tactical assessment. Yes, Alexis agreed. It did. And I won't pretend that didn't hurt. Words have impact, even when you know they're coming from ignorance. She stepped closer to them. Let them see her clearly in the pier lights. But here's what you're going to learn. The most dangerous enemy is the one you dismiss. I'm 5'4" and 118 pounds. In combat, that's been my greatest advantage, because enemies see small woman and think weak target. Then they're dead before they realize their mistake. She paused. You made the same mistake, but you get to learn from it without dying. That's a gift. Use it. Tessa's voice cracked. How? How do we move forward from this? You become better officers. You question your assumptions. You remember that the person you're overlooking might be the one who saves your life, or ends it. Sloan wiped her eyes. Commander, if you're willing, I'd like to request training, real training, from you. Learn how you operate, how you think, how you became who you are. My assignment at this facility is complete. I'm returning to SEAL Team 7. After that, then, someday, I want to learn from the best. Alexis studied Sloan's face, saw genuine humility there, genuine desire to grow. If our paths cross again, Lieutenant Mercer, I'll consider it. But first, you need to complete your training here. Earn your trident. Prove you're serious about being more than just your family's legacy. I will. I promise. Quinn spoke up. Thank you for saving my life, Commander, both from the chute malfunction and from Marlowe. I owe you everything. You owe me your best service to this country. That's all. Sullivan approached the group. Commander, your transportation is ready. SEAL Team 7 is staging at North Island. They're waiting. Alexis nodded, turned to face the three women one more time. One final lesson. When you see someone who doesn't look like they belong, someone small or female or different in any way, don't assume they're weak. Assume they had to be twice as good to get there. Assume they've overcome obstacles you can't imagine. Assume they're dangerous until proven otherwise. She started walking toward the parking lot, then stopped, looked back. And if you ever find yourself in combat next to someone who doesn't look like a warrior, pray they're on your side. Because the warriors who don't look dangerous are usually the most lethal of all. She walked away into the darkness. Behind her, three women stood in silence, their worldviews permanently altered by 3 months of lessons they'd never forget. 48 hours later, the sun rose over Naval Air Station, North Island. Alexis stood on the tarmac in full dress uniform, classified presidential commendation tucked in her jacket pocket. No ceremony, no public recognition, just quiet acknowledgement from those who knew what she'd accomplished. Operation Nightfall closed. 47 Soviet operatives neutralized. 17 years of penetration ended. Cross would spend the rest of his life in federal supermax, wondering how a 5'4" woman had outsmarted him. Marlo Dixon faced 20 years for espionage, her promising career destroyed by greed and resentment. But 18 SEAL operations would proceed safely, lives saved, missions protected. That was what mattered. A Seahawk helicopter waited, rotors beginning their slow rotation. 7 men in desert camouflage stood at attention nearby. SEAL Team 7, her team. As Alexis approached, her senior chief saluted. "Commander, on deck." "At ease, gentlemen." She returned the salute, felt the weight of 3 months lifting. "Status?" "Ready to deploy, ma'am. Bosnia, recon and direct action. Wheels up in 3 hours." She looked at each man in turn. Warriors who'd trusted her for 5 years, who'd waited 3 months for their commander to return from a mission they'd never fully understand. "Then let's get to work." They climbed aboard. The helicopter lifted, banking west toward the setting sun. Below, Coronado fell away, the training facility where she'd been mocked, where she'd proven that appearing weak was the deadliest advantage. Ahead lay new battlefields, new enemies who would make the same mistake. Perfect. 3 months later, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado. A new training class assembled in the briefing room. 43 male trainees, 4 female trainees. The women looked nervous, aware of the scrutiny they'd face. Captain Garrett Sullivan stood at the front of the room. His cover as Master Chief had ended with Operation Wraith Hunt, but he'd been reassigned to Coronado as Senior Training Officer, a role that let him shape the next generation of warriors. "Welcome to SEAL training. Most of you will fail. Some of you will quit. A few of you will earn the trident and join the most elite combat units in the world." He paused, let his gaze sweep across every face. "Before we begin, I want to tell you a story about a warrior who spent 3 months at this facility, about an officer who let everyone think she was weak, struggling, barely hanging on, about a commander who endured mockery and contempt and humiliation while hunting a Soviet spy who'd compromised American operations for 17 years. He walked to the wall, pulled down a projection screen. A photograph appeared. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan in full dress uniform, SEAL trident gleaming on her chest, 3 Navy Cross ribbons visible among dozens of other decorations. Standing tall despite her small stature, eyes looking directly at camera with absolute confidence. "This is Commander Brennan, SEAL Team 7, 5 years in command, 47 successful operations, currently deployed to Bosnia on classified assignment." He let them study the photograph. "Commander Brennan is 5'4", weighs 118 pounds. Looks like someone who should be teaching elementary school, and she is one of the most lethal operators in naval special warfare. Sullivan stepped closer to the screen. She was here 3 months ago, undercover, investigating security breach. Everyone dismissed her. Everyone thought she was weak. Everyone was wrong. He looked at the female trainees specifically. You women will face doubt, face scrutiny, face people who think you don't belong. Some of that will come from legitimate concern about physical standards. Some will come from prejudice and ignorance. He gestured at the photograph. Remember Commander Brennan. Remember that the warrior who looks least dangerous is often the most lethal. Remember that appearing weak is an advantage if you're smart enough to use it. Then he looked at the male trainees. And you men? Remember that the person you overlook might be the one who saves your life, or outranks you, or commands the team you're desperate to join. He turned off the projector. The image faded. Now let's get to work. Week 1 begins tomorrow at 0500. Get some sleep. You'll need it. The trainees filed out, nervous, excited, aware that they were beginning something that would change them forever. Sloan Mercer stayed behind. She was a junior instructor now, having completed SEAL qualification training and been assigned back to Coronado for a rotation. Captain Sullivan? Lieutenant Mercer. Have you heard from Commander Brennan since she deployed to Bosnia? Sullivan smiled slightly. Classified operations. She can't communicate except through official channels. But I hear things. Word gets around. What kind of things? Things that suggest she's doing exactly what she always does. Being dismissed, being lethal, getting the mission done. Sloan nodded. I hope someday I get to serve with her again, learn from her, maybe earn a fraction of the respect she's earned. Then be worthy of it, Lieutenant. Train the next generation. Pass along the lessons you learned. Remember that the person you're judging might be the person who saves your life. I will, sir. I promise. She walked out, left Sullivan alone in the briefing room. He looked at the blank screen where Commander Brennan's photograph had been. Somewhere in Bosnia, she was running operations, leading men into danger, accomplishing objectives that would never be publicly acknowledged, being the warrior nobody saw coming, the most dangerous kind. Sullivan smiled, turned off the lights, walked out into the California sunshine. The mission continued. The war on terror was coming. Everyone in intelligence could feel it building on the horizon. SEAL teams would be needed more than ever, and warriors like Commander Alexis Brennan would be there. Small and dismissed and absolutely lethal. Exactly where they needed to be. In the shadows, in the darkness, in the places where America's enemies never saw them coming, until it was too late.